So now I'm going to make you, Dr. Bulas, the host again.
It's recording now. So.
Okay. And do I need to click anything more or?
Nope, you're good. Thank
Great.
you very much. Sorry about that interruption.
Okay. So did you want to do an introduction first? I don't know if you know everyone else who's signed on or.
Right. Well, I mean, everyone knows who you are. We've publicized this a lot. Everyone knows that you're the director of radiology at Children's National Hospital, and we're so excited to meet you today. And I think that we're ready to go. We're excited to learn more about you and your path in medicine. So yeah.
Okay, well, again, thanks so much for having me. I really do enjoy talking to students, and I miss to get to meet each of you individually and talking with you one-on-one, but I think we've all learned to, there's some pluses with Zoom as well. So, so if you take a look at my, the title, this is fake. It's very hard to balance it all. I'll tell you a little bit about it. With my family, I have 2 sons. One is actually a psychiatry resident in New York. The other one ended up, my husband is a neurologist, so we're very physician oriented. My other son, he called himself the black sheep because he didn't want to go into medicine, but he's a Google. And he just escaped San Francisco, not only the COVID, but now his place is burning and there's smoke everywhere. So he's quarantining in my house. My other son was supposed to come down from New York City, but suddenly Maryland was apparently, the numbers hit badly, so they blocked us. And then it turned out all the numbers were incorrect. So he could have come down this weekend. No one's seen each other for 6 months. So at any rate, when I told my sons that I was going to be doing this presentation, balancing all, they just laughed because, you know, we'll go through this and it's fake. You can't really balance it all, but I'll talk about how you can do quite a bit and have a lot of fun with it if you just grab opportunities when you can. Try a lot of different things. Don't be too directed towards the course that you're going because there always are going to be different paths to take and they may really end up being a lot better than what you were thinking about. And if you look at my titles, you're told to put them to kind of impress people, but these are things that really, I never had goals of what's listed here, but I'll kind of go over what that is. So my name is Dorothy. Bulas is my maiden name. I do have a married name, which I use for my social security numbers, for my driver's license, but because we were both physicians and my family only had daughters, I elected to keep my maiden name after I got my MD degree. So I got an MD, and then what the heck are all these things? So F just stands for fellow, and sometimes, like I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I am a pediatrician as well as a radiologist. So if you just happen to be boarded as a pediatrician, you become a fellow of the American Association of Pediatrics. So that's where this is. The other fellowships, sometimes you only get if you are old or you've done a lot of work for the society or you've had other people nominate you. So this is a fellowship of the American College of Radiology. This is the fellowship of the AIUM. This is an ultrasound society, and this is another ultrasound society. And when I was starting out, I had no idea that these might be useful or important, but we'll go over how mentors are really important. And I had, particularly as a physician who's a woman, I'll tell you that every single person who told me that I need to go up for these fellowships was a woman. They were pseudo mentors. I didn't know them that well. They were people that I kind of met nationally, but they reached out to me and said, hey, I want to nominate you for this fellowship, and I'm going to you need to get 3 other letters and do this and that. But it wasn't really me doing it because I had no idea if those were useful or not. But we'll talk about career advancement. They actually are. And, part of why I like to talk to students is to kind of let you know that it's good to be aware of what helps to promote you. It allows you to get other jobs if you need them. It helps you to get promoted in an academic position. But this is where mentorship is very useful, and knowing other people in your specialty is. So I guess for definitely as a younger woman in college and medical school, I didn't really understand the importance of hobnobbing with other people and having them know who you are. But we'll talk a little bit about that, but it really does help to have other people know who you are and help promote you in different ways. So I am chief now of the Division of Diagnostic Imaging and Radiology at Children's. A lot of pediatricians tend to be women, but if you look at the number of women that are chiefs in our hospital, they're still woefully low. We're a lot better now, I would say. Even just 5 years ago or 8 years ago, we literally had 3 or 4, and that has increased tremendously. But we'll talk a little bit about the issues of being a woman and why not as many are heads of departments, chiefs of department, even though they may represent 70% or 80% of that department. And I'm not saying it's because men didn't let us be chiefs, but I think sometimes it's also how we feel and how we kind of envision what we want to do. And if someone had asked me when I was a college student, medical student, resident, like I never ever envisioned that I would be a chief of department. That just simply was not something that I really envisioned myself as and kind of wanted to do. Then now I'm also director of fetal imaging, and that's one of my real passions. It's so I get to do a lot of obstetric ultrasound, and at the beginning of my career, about 5 or 10 years into it, we started doing MRIs. And have any of you had an MRI done? Yeah, I'm seeing some hands. So MRI can really give you like amazingly beautiful images. You usually have to stay still. For those of you who have had an MRI, they kind of told you can't move. So how do you do that with a fetus who's like moving all over the place and the mother breathing? But over the last 15 years or so, we've developed techniques that we can actually do a lot of fetal imaging with MRI. And I happened to be at the forefront of this technology. So when I was first in college and in medical school and even in residency, this didn't exist. So again, did I ever think I'd be chief of fetal imaging? And I've written a book on fetal imaging. Of course, I never thought about it because it didn't exist when I was first starting out. So again, we'll talk a little bit about how taking opportunities, seeing what you like, and sometimes it just kind of works out for you. Then I've been president of my Society of Pediatric Radiology. There are, so this is a wonderful national society that represents all the pediatric imagers in the nation, Canada, Mexico, and all the United States. And again, did I ever envision being a president of anything? I was not that active in any committees when I was in college and medical school. So how did I become president? Again, it was just finding people I liked with, starting to work on different projects, and it just was a fabulous society. And again, I kind of fell into it and had the support of a lot of people, but it was never really anything that at the beginning of my career I was thinking I would accomplish. Now, the World Federation of Pediatric Imaging is something that I've actually always had as an interest of mine. Part of my background is my parents are immigrants. They came over from Poland after World War II. They were displaced, came to the States with people who were complete strangers to them. After World War II, there were a lot of Americans who were willing to sponsor displaced people around the world, particularly in Europe and Eastern Europe. And so they came over with nothing, no family, but just had the goodness of some people, and it made such a difference. And my mother actually completed medical school in Heidelberg in Germany and came over, and my father was a chemist, and they were, you know, they had like no money, but they ended up doing quite well. But it was always something that was inherent in me about, you know, giving back and how much just little support to people can do so much. So I've always been traveling. I've always been interested in outreach. I've done a lot of work in Africa and South America and Eastern Europe. So a couple years ago, we decided we really wanted to set up an international society of pediatric imaging. So I kind of worked with that for a couple years, and that's how I ended up being a president the past year of the World Federation. So that was something I did actively work on and try to create. But again, would I have ever thought I would have been a president of a federation that I started? No. So that's kind of my titles. So I've kind of talked a little bit about who I am. So I am a physician. That's why you've invited me to speak with you today. And there are a lot of different things that you can be as a physician. So I'm a real strong proponent of careers in the healthcare, because there's so many things that you can do. And we're always, you know, at the beginning in college, you may have no idea kind of what you want to do. But I argue that if you kind of work towards something in at least healthcare, there's still taking biology or some of the pre-med courses will always serve you well in the future. So when I actually went through a 6-year medical program. So what that is you apply in high school, and you really get accepted into medical school from high school. So you do 2 years of college and then 4 years of medical school. And it's not something that I think is good for everyone. As I mentioned, my family were immigrants. There are many countries around the world where you go straight to medical school from your high school. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. So they were like, what is this college? What a waste of money. You know, we don't have that much money. Like, apply to this. So I think you really have to be really certain that you want to go into medicine. I have to say that several of my friends who went into the 6-year program with me either took an extra year of college, and I ended up doing 2 residencies, because when I finished my pediatric residency, I was literally, I think, 23, and I was way too young. So I would look madly for what else I could study. So radiology came up. I'm being a little facetious about it. I love children. I really loved going into pediatrics, but I found that while I was doing my residency, I was always finding myself down in the radiology room. I loved figuring out what the child had, but I really got frustrated with the treatment. I felt they either got better no matter what I did or got sick no matter what I did. I really got excited about figuring out what they had, but just didn't have the patience, I think, for the actual treatment. So radiology turned out to be my golden direction. And I'm so glad I had my pediatric training. Looking back, it kind of makes sense. Like when I was growing up, I was always reading mystery novels, and you know, I really like very high level, I like hospital work. But but it took me a while. So when people are so stressed out about trying to make a decision about what they want to do, there are ways to still take different paths for your life. So I ended up doing medical school early, but it allowed me to take another residency. Some people might say, gee, you did a pediatric residency. That was too much work. But it really, I think, served me as a very unique leg up as a radiologist, because I really understood clinically what the pediatricians needed from me. And the other thing that I found is, again, as a pediatrician, like, you spend a lot of time talking to your patient, talking to your family. So pediatric radiology is a unique part of radiology. I think many of you might think radiologists just sit in a dark room, don't talk to anyone, just make diagnoses. But with pediatric radiology, I really do get to talk to families, see the patients. And when fetal imaging came into play, I really got to sit and counsel a lot of families in this very new area that has amazing medical ethical issues, which really fascinate me. We don't have right answers for everything that we diagnose, but I really loved really sitting down and trying to work these out with families from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different religions. So that pediatric background really served me well. So as a physician, you can be a clinician. That means that you talk to patients, take care of patients. You can do interventional procedures. You can also be a researcher. And some people just say, I will be a clinician, or I'll be a researcher, I'll be a teacher. What's wonderful with at least the career I picked was I could be all of those. So, so as a researcher, I did end up writing papers, working on some NIH grants. Again, I kind of fell into it. I really did not envision myself as a researcher at all. I just didn't want to kill anyone. That was kind of my goal when I was a resident. And also as an attending, you know, like, let me just like keep to the bottom line. But you learn that if you're doing research, you're kind of answering questions that we don't all have. And we do talk about medicine as you learn. About 50% of what you learn is wrong or not useful, and you just don't know which 50% that is. And that's what research does, kind of helps you figure out and make advances. And that's such an important part of all of healthcare. So it did turn out I was a researcher. And again, did I ever envision I'd be a professor after 10 or 15 years? It really wasn't my goal. I didn't really understand why that was important. But I did have, again, some mentors who came to me and said, you know, Dorothy, you need to be writing some papers, because if you write papers, you'll get promoted to an associate professor. And if you write more, you can get to be a professor. And I'm like, well, I don't really want that. Why should I work this extra amount of time? And they're like, well, it's important, you know, it helps to push our specialties, but it also helps your own career. You make more money if you get promoted. I think as women, we don't particularly think about that. You know, we're doing it just because we love the career. But I had to have some men say, hey, you know, you want to get recognized for what you're doing. And if you want to have parity and make as much as another guy who gets promoted, you have to do this. So those were things, again, that I really didn't think of as I was first starting out. And then what I also love about pediatrics is another arm of our specialty, particularly in pediatrics, is being an advocate. So we're advocates of access to healthcare. And again, that segued quite nicely to my interest in outreach, particularly with pediatrics. And we'll talk a little more about how societies helped me to kind of develop my career. Now, on the other hand, you know, there are a lot of different parts of me as well as being a physician. So I did get married. Someone actually did want to marry me, even though I was working so hard. He was a physician as well. We met in medical school. I did become a mother, and also a sister. I bring that up because one of my sisters has Down syndrome. Do all of you know what Down syndrome is? It's like trisomy 21, developmental delay. And that actually was a huge influence on my life as well. By the age of 12, I was starting to learn genetics, and the fact that the single extra chromosome had my sister be a certain way that was so different from myself and my other sister was very striking to me. And I think, though I never consciously thought about it, it kind of makes sense to how I ended up going into fetal medicine and prenatal imaging and diagnosis was because of her. I'm a daughter. As I mentioned, my parents are immigrants, so they really kind of pushed us to that we would have to be independent. They also told us that we would be taking care of our disabled sister the rest of our lives, so we needed to have some kind of profession to help take care of her. And then, believe it or not, my father is still alive. My mother just died a year ago. He's in his 90s, and he's still like walking 3 miles a day, reading. He keeps me up to date on what's happening in the world. So I still have to be, he's still taking care of me in some ways, but eventually I may have to take care of him. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but you do have all these other roles that you have to mix in with your roles in your career. So you need to have time with that. And after all this, but who am I? So as I was preparing this presentation, I was kind of writing lists of things that I have been. I actually, in high school and grammar school, I was actually a ballet dancer. And that was going to be my career. I was going to be a ballet dancer. The fact that my parents were somewhat supportive, not that they really thought it was a great idea, but they didn't completely dash my dreams. My dreams as a dancer kind of ended when I grew to 5'10". You don't see me, but I'm really tall, and you don't have tall ballet dancers. So that's where I like to say, keep your options open. You can have passions, you can go and do them, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. So do I still do ballet? I did through medical school. I do yoga now. I do some dancing. So it's still always been a part of me, and the core taught me a lot of discipline. It has taught me the importance of staying healthy and in good shape. So it's still there, but you never want to see me dance right now. But what do I do? I can ski, I swim, I hike. There are a lot of loves that I have at times through particularly the first few years when my kids were younger. You do kind of lose yourself a little bit because you're kind of giving to everyone. But again, what I would say to all of you is to really retain your passions, keep them. You may not be able to spend as much time as you can doing them at certain times of your life, but they will come back. And now that my children are gone, and we're in a pandemic and we're kind of stuck at home, and I can't travel and lecture, a lot of these things are still very important to me. So are there any questions before I move on? I'm just looking at some chat. So Adam was just saying, for clinical research versus hard science research, good questions. So I've been doing more clinical research. In a lot of specialties in medicine, you really have to make a decision about if you're going to be like a PhD or a tenured researcher. What's really nice about radiology and pediatric radiology is you can still be considered a successful researcher and still do clinical research. So I've been on a lot of NIH grants as the radiologist, the consultant. I have not had my own R01 because that really would take like a lot, 30 to 40% of my time, which in radiology is a little bit hard to do. but I would have to say I've been on like the first fetal surgery NIH study that was done. I was part of, that was for meningomyelocele repairs. So if you look at my grants, I look like a real researcher, but am I a true, you know, at the lab research? No, I was not. And then again, a question was, how was I able to balance it all? And this will be my theme for the rest of my talks. And really, you'll hear me say that you don't really balance it all, but you kind of have waves where you can do one thing and then sometimes you have to kind of do other things. But I do want you to look at this slide, and I've really been able to do all of this. You know, I really feel very happy about where I've been as a physician, as a researcher, as an advocate, but I have a very full life as a wife, a mother, and you know, friend, and other activities. So, so we'll talk a little bit about how you can kind of do it, but you can't have it all the time. So, any questions before this is kind of skipping to medicine, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about college and deciding. But any other questions before I move into college and applying to medical school? Okay, so college it's very interesting to see the American way of doing college versus like the European or 6-year program. I do think having 4 years of college is wonderful. I think it really helps you grow as a person. As I mentioned, I was way too young when I finished medical school. I just never had the chance to really discover a lot of myself. But on the other hand, some of the advantages of the 6-year medical program were I didn't have to maintain a grade point average. I was already in. I didn't have to take the MCATs. And I didn't have to go through that competition that I think you were kind of alluding to at some universities. It really can be extremely competitive being pre-med. So there were some real pluses to kind of skipping over those 2 years, some negatives. But what I would say is I'll talk a little bit about my son. My son was very concerned about, I think he knew he wanted to be a doctor, though he didn't admit it to us for a while. And I think it's important you need to figure it out yourself. And we were very careful as two parents that were physicians to not make our children feel like they had to go into medicine. And frankly, my older son, I'm surprised he ended up going into medicine. He's a beautiful writer. He's a huge advocate. He actually was a history and Spanish major. He went through college, and he did want to take a gap year. We insisted that he apply to med school before he did that year, because it's an intense, you know, writing the applications, taking the MCATs, and we were just afraid that it would really ruin that year. You know, we were like, yeah, if you want to go and do some outreach somewhere, that's fine, but get in first. So that was his route. I didn't realize that so many people now, you know, really do like a 5th year, either taking some extra courses or doing some internships. That was because, you know, we just weren't in the know. But I think it did work out for him. He did apply as a senior. He did get in. He ended up going to Mount Sinai Medical School in New York, and they have a very strong humanitarian slant. So they liked his history and Spanish, you know, interests. And it ended up being an excellent school for him because it's in Spanish Harlem. So he did a lot of work with clinics in Spanish Harlem as a medical student. But he got in and then asked for a year of reprieve. And during that year, He traveled, he worked for an NGO in Ecuador and in South America. And I think that really taught him a lot. He grew a lot as a person, and then he was ready to go on to med school. The medical school applications, I think, are really hard. I think he had to write 26 write-ups. I don't know if any of you have done that. They're pretty intense, and so I think you do have to have some unique experiences to pull from to write all these things. The MCATs are a pain, but you do really kind of need to know that information. It makes medical school that much easier. Somehow he was able to get out of, I don't know what course, biochem or something, which I thought was a big mistake. I would take as many of the basic sciences in college as possible, because medical school is just so fast and furious. You don't really want to be learning something for the first time there. So although some of the pre-med requirements seem to be like a pain, it's very helpful in trying to get through those medical school years. Medical schools are kind of changing. The basic classical way is the first 2 years are classroom still. Some people have moved to the first 1.5 years for classroom, and then you start getting integrated in the clinical. But medical school is, again, a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of classroom work, a lot of memorizing, and you do kind of forget about why you want to be a doctor. So it's good to have some experience before starting medical school to make sure that this is really what you want to do. And that's why I think a lot of medical schools do look to see what kind of internships, extracurricular activities you've done. Have you really done anything in medicine? And it's not just a checklist. I think it really helps you, because that first year or two, you start wondering, why did I do this? Why did I go into this? Because they're rough. They're kind of rough years, and you kind of don't really get to do the fun parts of medicine until the end of your second year, and then your third and fourth years. So does that make sense? Are there any questions about, I'm kind of going fast through college, but that might be the most things you're interested in. Any questions about college courses or experiences?
Right, I guess I do have one question I think that might help everybody out a little bit. I guess maybe we want to find a little bit more about what you believe might be very valuable. How do we find out more about individual medical schools that we're interested in applying to? Like, if you had not told us about the Mount Sinai's slant towards humanitarian interests, I would not have known that personally. Where can we find, do we just go to the website to find that out more? Or?
Yeah, that's really hard. And actually, my son did not find out. There's actually a whole humanitarian program at Mount Sinai, which he would have been perfect to have been part of, but he didn't know about it. And here we're pretty savvy about all the medical schools. So I would say one of the things you need to apply to as many medical schools as you could afford to, because medical schools, they just have small classes. They're just, doesn't mean you're not worth admitting at any of these places, but they're just small, and they really try to have diverse backgrounds and different interests. They don't want everyone to be a PhD candidate. They don't want everyone to be a woman who's interested in pediatrics. They really want to have a diverse class. But the different medical schools do have different motives. Some of them tend to be a little more research oriented. They'll have stronger PhD, MD programs. He just discovered that Mount Sinai tended to like, humanitarian classes. He got into, it was just interesting. It's not like he got into every single medical school. He got into quite a few, but he didn't get into quite a few. And he's the same student, so what made them, some pick him and some not? I think it's also kind of what they're interested in. So he kind of made the boxes because of his Spanish interest, his outreach history, the fact that they do like to have people with these varied backgrounds. There were other medical schools that didn't even interview him because he was not really a very straight science-oriented research person. So I would say apply to as many as you can. You'll kind of get a sense, also talking to different people. But sometimes they don't really like writing it out. You know, it's not like we really like nerds who have research in biochemistry. They don't want to put themselves in that one hole. They're all kind of interested in diversity and so forth. So it's a little bit hard to catch. What I would say is you want to apply to as many as possible because, yeah, they may be very interested in PhD research, biochemistry people, but they may want to get one or two history majors too. You know, so it doesn't. You don't want to write yourself off to some places, even though they may have the reputation for it. So I think the bottom line is you really have to apply to as many as possible. And then again, location. You know, if GW, everyone's applying to GW in Georgetown, you may do better applying to some places in the South or in the Northeast, you know, some variations where they say, oh, we haven't had anyone from GW. So that might make you more attractive. While if you apply here, you know, it doesn't make you that special. So that's where some of that diversity kind of comes in. So you do have to, and then, you know, the things that you do, I think, again, just ensure that you really can show that you have had you've really been thoughtful about some experiences in medicine, that you've done some of that hard work, that you can really kind of know what it takes. And it's not just because someone said, oh, you might be a good doctor, you know, and go and do it. So you do have to have those personal stories. Do they read all the things that you write? I don't know, but I think it really helps your story. And then when you actually have interviews, it will come out, you know. So I think it's a good time for some self-discovery. What I would say for all of you, if you haven't been doing any journaling during the pandemic, I would do that. I would try to write a little bit about some of your thoughts and then save them. And as you end up having to write some of these essays, and as I said, there's so many of them, you might be able to pull a couple of things from them. Again, my son had done a lot of kind of outreach things, and he was doing journaling. He was a good writer. So when he had to sit down and write these medical school applications, he was pulling from some of the things he wrote like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but they were like self-discovery things that really ended up being kind of perfect for some of the questions they were asking. So don't wait till the last minute, I think is what I'm saying. And, you know, try to get some unique experiences, but be thoughtful about it and write a little bit about it. That can be very helpful. Anything else about college experiences? Because this may be the most important thing for you. But don't be afraid to take strange courses. You know, I always love to say, you know, Steve Jobs took calligraphy and, you know, ended up being like a real great thing for him. So don't be afraid to take something a little bit out of the box because you don't know where it'll take you. So don't be afraid. So this kind of jumps from medical school to specialty, which may be a little bit too far from you, but we'll go through these a little bit. But again, I would say for where you are right now, do not worry about a specialty. You know, you want to be as open as possible to everything. You want to just say, I want to be a physician and just go there. Do not get too settled into a certain, oh, I want to be an ophthalmologist or a plastic surgeon, because people will look at you strangely. And I think you'll then lose some of the great experiences of trying everything. And as I mentioned, for me, if you had told me as a medical student or a college student that I was going into radiology, I would have just laughed in your face, because in those days, radiologists really were, at least my vision of radiologists was a complete nerd, sitting in the black, dark room, never talking to anyone. And that certainly wasn't me, and certainly was what I was interested in. So it was just by certain experiences and people I met, realized that, hey, this isn't really what I was thinking. And I just lucked into a fabulous, fabulous job and career that I never ever thought I would kind of jump into. So for choosing specialties, whatever it is, be passionate. And again, I was passionate about children. I was passionate about genetics. I was passionate about service. So pediatrics kind of was the thing that kind of helped me get excited about my initial specialty. And then a lot of people ask me about, well, should I go into this because it's easier than that? I think I like surgery, but it's way too hard. So I think I want to do anesthesia. And I would just say, just be a little careful about these choices, because you really are going to be working hard no matter what you do. And if you end up doing something that you don't like, that hard work is even harder for you. You know, if you're doing something that you love, it doesn't seem like it's hard work. So just be a little bit careful about looking at choices. And I can segue into when I first went into pediatrics. Pediatrics seemed to be like the harder field. Like, you know, people were calling in the middle of the night, the children were sick. You were on call 24/7. My residency, oh my God, I was like on, like I'd be on for 36 hours, then I would get 12 hours off and I'd start working again. And that was like every other, really, really hard residency. And when I was, when I moved to radiology, that was considered a very plush specialty. Like, you know, we didn't have to work through the night. You had weekends off. Now I work a lot harder than all my friends who are pediatricians because we now work 24/7. Like, I have my office in my home. We have really sick patients. They want immediate reports. It's 24/7. I go in to do procedures on my children in the middle of the night when I'm on call. My husband, who's the neurologist, who initially had a harder calls than me now, he's home all the time. He just calls the radiologist if he needs something. So he's home just answering. And so his job has become so much easier, and mine through the years became much harder. So you never, be careful again what you wish for. Like, just do something that you'd like to do. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying it's very ironic that now I physically and mentally am working a lot more than my initial choice as a pediatrician, when I thought I had kind of picked an easier job when I moved to radiology. So what can you do? Okay, so for like residencies, and again, this is a little bit beyond your guys, but again, because there are so many different decisions with medical school as well as residency, is, do you really want to be academic? Do you want to be a clinician? And this is maybe segueing a little bit to how do you figure out what medical schools you're interested in. You know, don't pigeonhole yourself too much, because if you tell the medical school admissions officer, oh yeah, I want to do academics, I want to be a, I want to be a researcher, that might pull you away from some medical schools. Or if you just tell them, I just want to be a clinician, that may keep you from being looked at as an attractive applicant for other medical schools. So, you know, keep it kind of general, and try to keep all your options open, because you really don't know. You know, things will kind of fall into place. You are not defining yourself in college. So, you know, that's one definitely thing I would just say is, just show how capable you are, how you're not afraid to try new things, that you're flexible, you're amenable, you know, there are a lot of things that you can do, and that will make you a very attractive and strong applicant. Oh, so I have, let's see, there are a few more questions here. How do you suggest contacting different physicians if you can shadow them? Very interesting. Yeah, I don't know through what GW has. My husband graduated from Bucknell, so every year he has a couple of those college students shadowing him. But so I'd kind of go through GW, but with the connection through the hospital and children's. COVID is making it really hard this year, I have to say, with the whole social distancing and limiting the number of people in a room, seeing patients. I don't want you to be too stressed about it, but I think it's going to be really hard right now to be shadowing. But it's something I would be talking to your advisors, and I think you as a group can say, hey, we have a problem here. We really want to be shadowing. How can we do it? I think if you have this big number, they're going to be forced to try to figure it out, and they can put a little bit of pressure on. I think you're going to have less success currently doing it on your own, if that makes sense. So I think this is a great group, do that. Are there doctors involved in healthcare policy? Great question. Absolutely. And again, onto the segue of advocacy, like for pediatrics. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, very, very active on the Hill. I've gone to the Hill. I've taken courses on healthcare policy. I'm also one of my hats for the American College of Radiology. We also work on advocacy, patient access, limit CPT. We really, really, really need more people in medicine that are interested in healthcare policy and are willing to spend the time and effort on it. It's, I think we were woefully supported by it, and a lot of decisions are made with no physicians in the room. So we do need people who are interested in it, have had some experience and background, and that would be a real, big plus, I think, on your resume as well, because we do need it. For my hats in the Society of Pediatric Radiology and ACR, I am sending junior members to these courses on the Hill for advocacy, for policy making, for lobbying, and there are not that many, that are really interested in pulling at it, but it's very, very important for many different reasons. So great area, of healthcare to be working on. Absolutely. Okay.
Dr. Bulas,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just wondering, is there opportunities for undergraduates to get involved in healthcare policy, especially with like on the Hill and like the education classes that you were discussing?
I think the fact that you're in DC, there should be, again, as I said, certain societies are more active than others. You might want to, again, I would see, because there's some healthcare, some real big healthcare advocates at GW and Georgetown. You may want to also segue to the AAP. I think that's one of the strengths actually of being in DC. I don't have specific names though for myself, but I have had friends kind of get some lobbying work in the summer as well. Again, a little bit harder now with COVID, but just an example of how important it is. One of our emergency room physicians who had done some healthcare policy, she became our spokesperson with Mary Bowser with COVID. And she did such a superb job. And, part of it was her, but a lot of it was like her training that who knows when it's going to be helpful. But she literally helped lead the pediatric COVID response teams. But she became a real critical person on Marion Bowser's team, not just for pediatrics, but for the whole city. And it was a win-win for her. It was win-win for us. It was win-win for the children. So I would say that's an area I absolutely love. I struggle to find people who are interested in it. There are definitely ways to get involved on, but I would say on a college level, you need to just do some asking around at GW and Georgetown, but absolutely very important.
Thank you.
Now, again, I'm talking a lot about career, but I think a lot of you are going, well, it's still like, so where do you have time to be a person? And how do you make decisions? Can you make a decision for medical school with personal reasons? That can be hard. Certainly if you're from different states, the state schools are less expensive. The cost of medicine is still ridiculously high. And while you're looking for a medical school, any medical school to take you, if you're luxurious enough to have some choices, I think you're really going to have to be looking at the cost as well. Unfortunately, I think healthcare financially is going to keep on dropping a little bit. And right now, the healthcare costs remain ridiculously high. So if you can get any type of cuts, supports, scholarships, state school support, you really do need to think about this very seriously. Because what happens if you grab all these loans when you're going into your 4th year of medical school and you're trying to decide what you want to go into, if you have a huge number of loans, but you're really passionate about being a pediatrician or a psychiatrist or a family practitioner, they make significantly less money than some of the other specialties. And I see a lot of medical students having to take some of the other specialties just because they need to be able to, pay back their huge loans. So if there's any way you can kind of avoid some of the loans early on, it just gives you a little more freedom to go into something that you're passionate about. All those subspecialties are great. I'm just always a little nervous about having people choose a career because of the finances of it. You have to have your realities of it. But for residencies, certain residencies are harder than others. Absolutely. OBGYN is going to be harder than dermatology. But again, as I said, if you really work hard and you're passionate, your dermatology residency might be just as hard as someone who's taking it easy in OB. So it kind of depends on who you are as well. But there's some practical number of calls you take, and how long your days are. There is some protection now with the residency hours. Like in the old days, as I said, it really was pretty grinding. I think you are a little more protected now, but there's certainly some specialties that are a little bit easier on you than others, and you'll kind of get that sense. Also, people try to figure out, well, where they want to live. Sometimes it's dependent about where your family is, whether again you've gone to a state school, where your significant other may be able to find a job and so forth. If you have children, do you have enough of a support system? So those really are all things that may end up helping to make the choice, but sometimes that's it. A residency is a match, and they don't care really that Aunt Minnie is in Minnesota, but you got your residency in Oklahoma. They don't kind of have all those nuances. So again, residencies sometimes are a little bit harsh in placing you someplace that may not have been where you were expecting. So location, family support, spouse convenience, all kind of help you to rank residencies, but it may end up being irrelevant if it's a very competitive residency. You may just have to go where they put you, unfortunately. And then jobs is way at the end, but again, what's wonderful about medicine is there are a lot of different career goals. Do you want to be academic? Do you want to be in a private practice? Do you like outpatient work versus being in the hospital? And mentors along the way might kind of help you. You haven't met them yet. They may completely change you. As I said, for me, as I was going through things, I realized I probably liked academic more than private. I liked hospital more versus outpatient. But then I did this rotation in radiology, and suddenly this mentor said, you should be a pediatric radiologist. And, you know, never had thought about it, but this one person said, you should do this. Go meet some people in Washington. I was in Baltimore, came down here, fell in love with the hospital, met people, and I got this letter. I was a pediatric resident, and I got a letter saying, congratulations, we've accepted you to be a fellow here, you know, in 5 years. P.S. You do need to do a radiology residency. So, you know, but I had this like holy grail letter, and it suddenly gave me a path I could work, because I was a little lost. I was just a little lost in peds. I was like, this is okay, but I don't really quite know what to do. So sometimes people, and I never met him again. Like, you know, he just said that one day, and I never got to thank him. He was one of the grandfathers of pediatric radiology, but you know, these people will kind of pop out, say the thing that you needed to hear, and you go for it. And it worked out for me. So keep your ears open and mind open. And then for personal goals, we talked a little bit about, you know, hours and call for different specialties, but you're way too young early in your careers to be thinking about that. You know, one of the lovely things about medicine, though, is you really will have some choices about where you want to live eventually. And it does give you some really nice independence, which is great freedom. You know, you're always going to have a job. And that's one thing I always talk about. One of the great things about medicine is, you know, you really have some unusual flexibility that some other jobs you may not have in the future. Okay, so I know a lot of people say, well, okay, how do you have a family with all this? It sounds like you've been working 24/7, you're reading, writing, publishing, sleeping at the hospital. Like, do I really have children? So support is key. And you can get support in a lot of different ways. Yeah, like a significant other spouse is really, really key. So I just looked out. My husband is great. He's in private practice. I don't think he knew he was going to be, you know, such a supportive father, like in those, when we were medical students. Yeah, he had no clue. Poor guy. But he just was great. He's been a great father. He's like a year or two ahead of me. And I was saying I was a fellow when we moved down here, and he was an attending. And at that time, he actually had a day off a week to do office stuff. So we had a preschool where a parent had to go and help like once every 2 weeks. So he was like he was the father. He was the one who went to the co-op preschool. Like all the other women were there, and then he showed up. And but it was, you know, he thought it was fine. He liked it. They taught him how to play with Play-Doh and stuff like that. So, but you know, you never would have thought here this adult neurologist who was, you know, had finished medical school and so forth, was going to be the mother in a lot of ways. So this was, you know, 30 years ago. So you do have to have someone who's going to be willing to kind of do different things and be there and be supportive. Family is really important. My parents were very supportive of my career, but they were also very supportive of just of travel. They thought that was really very important for us, and vacation time. So I started getting invited to a lot of meetings internationally, and they were like, "Go, you know, we'll come down, take care of the kids. You need to go." It wasn't like, "We're not going to help you," or "This is ridiculous. You're a mother, you know, take care of your kids." Like they were like, no, you should do this. I'll be there. And they were very excited about any time I got invited to do something. My husband was very excited, would try to come with me sometimes. As the kids grew up, they started getting excited. I like to tell this story. There was this yearly meeting in Colorado, which included skiing. And I was doing a lot of research for the group. So a couple times we were invited, and I took my kids, and I would take my father, and we would all ski, and I would do my presentations and then get to ski with them. So about the 4th year or so, but I would have to write, I have to do some research and write a poster or something to get accepted to go to these meetings. So like the 4th year, my younger son, I think he was about 7 at the time, goes, so Mom, are we going to ski this year? I said, oh, I can't think of any real project. I don't really think we're going to go this year. He goes, oh, no, Mommy, you need to go and write. You need to go and think of a paper and, work on the manuscript so we can go. So they kind of, they didn't view me as, working to be away from them. They kind of saw that there were these positives. I would come home and talk about a sick child or something. So I really tried to engage them. So they were really invested in what I was doing, and they really understood when I was away from them, I was really doing something that I valued, but was doing some good, that I missed them, but they were also helping this child as well. So I got them kind of involved. And with the research too, which you'd say, well, you're already working hard, why should you also be writing and writing papers? But they kind of said, oh, well, if she gets this accepted, we get to go do this trip. So, so that helped. So I've been able to take them to a lot of wonderful places around the world because of the invitations I've had as visiting professors and lecturing at meetings. And sometimes I take one, sometimes I take the whole family, but they were very, very special times that we now, look back at, fondly. I took, and I think that it also helped push them in different directions. My younger son, I got invited to do some outreach in Eritrea. Does anyone know where that is? It's next to Ethiopia. And so he was in high school, and I went out there, very, very isolated third world country, who when I got there, their CT had been down for 6 months. They didn't have an MR, their ultrasound was terrible. Basically, they had very little radiologic work for me to do. And so I would give lectures on, well, if you had a CT, this is, obviously, I was completely unhelpful, basically. He, on the other hand, helped put together an ultrasound machine that had been donated by China. He taught all the pediatric residents how to do Excel, like was teaching them some software. And it really spurred him on. He ended up going into engineering, doing some international work, got invited to work in as engineering in the world or something because of his experience in Eritrea. Started a company that was called Waste to Watts in Africa. And I think that's kind of how he ended up now at Google. So here, who knew, that a trip that I was sent to try to help people was kind of a waste for me, but he was able to help people learn some things, but also really started him on a different program. So those are some of our stories. And then for all of you, do not be, if you need someone to help clean your rooms and houses and nannies and babysitters, one thing I do tell a lot of my more junior attendings is, even if you don't have that much money, if you're kind of exhausted and too spread out, get help. There are times when you need to do things and be frugal, but there are other times that if you can get someone to help you do certain things, do it. So that, and I had a nanny for 14 years who was kind of part of my family from Poland. So that kept my Polish background up, but that worked. So get help when you can. And all these are very important. So any questions about family? Okay, so lastly, when to say yes and when to say no. So it sounds like I said yes to a lot of different things. When you're first starting out, I would say yes as much as possible within reason. Societies, as I mentioned, I never really had been a joiner through college and med school, but as I worked into the societies, you meet a lot of people who have your passions. You develop friends, advances your career. It just allows you to continue to grow. So I did find joining societies very helpful. Though I have to say, when I first had my children, you know, I was just treading water. I was just trying to not kill anyone, take care of my children, and sleep a little bit. So there are going to be times where you can do some of these things, but there are going to be times that you just have to say no. And these are, like, I was kind of listing all the different societies I ended up being a membership of. The Society of Pediatric Radiology was really the most important one for me, but all the others really were very important in different parts of my career. So so I'm glad I didn't say no to all of them, but I did say yes all the time to doing certain things. And then for home, you know, sometimes you just have too many things, like, you know, you have a baby or someone's sick or your parents are ill. That's when you say no to this stuff. And there just be times where you really have to concentrate on things that are happening at home. And we all are in the same boat, you know, men, women, older, younger. So, so when you can help others, help them. So then when you need the help, they'll be more than willing to help you. So, can you have it all? So no, you really can't. When we think of having it all, you kind of think of this trajectory, and this is not very realistic, to be honest. I mean, if you're living on your own, working, you know, there's some brilliant people who just shoot like this. It can happen, but more likely than not, you know, like you do really well and then things start happening, you just kind of slow down. But I don't want you to think that these are failures, but I really like to say you really can kind of have it all, but not all the time. So I kind of like to think about my trajectory and others as like more of a sine wave. So I think this was kind of how men's careers used to be. You know, you kind of went on this trajectory and you just kept on going, moving, getting promoted, and that's how you went through. But realistically, for men and women nowadays, you can't really do this. You're going to sacrifice something, either your own health, your family's health, your relationships. Something is going to give if you just kind of go straight on this route. So if you kind of have a straight route, but realize that there are times when you're really have an exciting project, you're kind of really working hard, you go up there and then you're going to kind of relax a little bit, or someone gets sick or you have a baby, you know, there are going to be times where you can really have a lot of energy in something, and there are going to be other times you're going to have to concentrate on something else. And if you still view this as a very successful life, you can kind of balance it all. So I really like this sine curve, and that's how I didn't think about this prospectively, but now when I do talk to people, this is kind of how view a career can work and kind of have it all. So, do you have any questions?
I guess I have a question if no one's going to ask. So my question is, during your time as a resident and in medical school, did you ever feel that you were like, did you feel like that you were ever at like a disadvantage compared to like men because of like discrimination? And how were you able to like overcome that? I know like, especially like in the past, it might have been even more discrimination. But yeah, I just interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't overt. And again, because remember, I went into pediatrics where there were some more women, but I have to say, it was kind of the expectations. Like, again, like I never thought I'd be a professor. I never thought I'd be a chief. I never thought I was going to be a president of anything. And part of that was, you know, what everyone says about you. You know, they don't think you're good. You know, women at that point were doing any of that and thinking about it. So you do have to kind of believe in yourself, but I wouldn't blame necessarily all the men around me, because part of it was from within as well. But there are also things that have changed dramatically. When I started as a fellow at Children's, this is a children's hospital. It's a wonderful hospital. I love it. When I got there, I was pregnant. And there was no maternity leave. I asked, well, how do you do this? So they referred me to an orthopedic surgeon at the hospital, Dr. Tosi. Some of you may meet her. She'd just had a baby. So she was an orthopedic surgeon, woman at the time. So you can imagine, really tough. And I talked to her and said, well, so what did you do? She goes, oh, well, I took the weekend off. I had my baby and I took the weekend off. Just be aware that in DC, there's a law that you're not supposed to drive after you have a baby. So just, if they stop you, don't tell them you had a baby. I mean, I went home and I was weeping. There was no maternity leave. So I saved up all my 4 weeks of vacation. And I actually had HR, Human Resources, call me down and tell me I couldn't have my baby during my vacation. It was just so weird. It was just really weird. So it wasn't even being promoted to professor. It was like, how are you a physician and a mother? Like, it was just so strange. So things are better. I mean, I think people have realized, and I think the most important thing now is, we now have paternity leave. And I think, I think it has to be fair. I think it really wasn't fair. Your residencies are so hard for you to be away for 3 months, have everyone else take your call. No, it's just not really that fair. So I made sure I took my extra call before I had the baby, just to have some parity. And I think the fact that now men have time off and, can also be fathers and see that they're important has made life a little bit easier, at least for families. The same thing with making equal money, that I always worked. I told everyone because I love my work. Money had nothing to do with it. And it's fascinating now as a chief to see these men coming in and they're like, I was supposed to get this 2% raise and I didn't get it this year. I never really looked at that stuff. And it was almost like, as a woman, I couldn't really do that. That was not, I had to just be tough and say I was doing things because I loved doing it and I wasn't doing it for the money. And I think just women, need to feel comfortable asking for what they demand. When I got promoted to professor, my chief literally told me, he said, well, they needed another woman to become a professor. I mean, he said that to me. And then I said, well, am I going to get a raise with my advancement? He goes, well, you don't really need it because your husband works, and this is just 20 years ago. So I lived through it. I didn't find it stopping me, but I feel like I was just very naive. And I think it's just really good to have these discussions for women to understand how important it is to have mentors, to want equality, but I think men want equality now as well. Just kind of how things were. So, yeah, things have changed quite a bit, but there's still not that many, professors out there. There aren't that many chiefs out there. But part of it is also not pushing ourselves as women. You have to really want these things, and you have to envision it yourself. I think as a woman, I thought, if you worked really hard or double hard and were the best, they will hand you these positions. They don't. You have to work hard for them, but you have to also ask for them, demand them, understand what it takes to get them. It's not this, oh, you did really well, I'm going to give it to you. You have to be a little bit less naive, I think. And that's certainly what I've learned during my years, if that makes sense. But I think it's the same for men and women. people will not hand you things. You kind of really have to kind of understand your goals and dream big, because if you don't dream it, it's harder to get to. It's harder to get to. Yeah, yeah, I agree. But everyone needs to stand up for what they deserve. But I think for women, again, there's still this big discrepancy. And when I became chief a couple years ago. It was shocking. There was still this discrepancy about the women in my group and the men. And we've worked to, luckily, I was working with a very wonderful VP, and we just over the last 3 years have made adjustments. So it's fair, but things are not transparent for good reason, because there's still a lot of discrepancy out there. It's interesting.
I actually have a question, if it's not. Okay, so first of all, thank you for coming and speaking with us, Dr. Bulas. I just had a question about, we were speaking about different policies earlier. I know you said you send some students to like listen in or be a part of that. So like, have you been a part of any policies, and also which ones are like most important to you?
Yeah, so for like the American Academy of Pediatrics, our policies really are, the things that are important are pediatric access. So, healthcare. So all the Medicaid, those are really, really important to us. Like right now, the whole census, getting people to just sign up for census has been really important. Children's is a strong advocate. And why is the census that important? It's like, if you don't count all the children that are in your area and district, you really lose a lot of money for your area. Like for DC, we've had a very active campaign, because after the last census, we were probably about, I'm making up numbers, but it was millions of dollars each year that we could have gotten if we had like correct census for children. So things like that, things like vaccine. Again, my hat as a pediatric radiologist is there are very few radiologists who are trained in pediatrics, and it really is a very specialized field. There are a lot of issues with radiation, safety, and sedation, and there are very few fellowships in the United States, much less internationally. So we have set up some scholarships. So we have different observerships around the world where we have radiologists come and train just in pediatrics for 3 months. One of the problems with international outreach is there's a big brain drain. If you invite some physicians to come to the States to train, they just don't go back. And I understand why they don't, but we've kind of developed these observerships so they will get trained in a country near them so that they can kind of serve on that end. But I would say for the United States, the main things are just the healthcare disparity, the access to good pediatric healthcare is huge. We're just really very concerned about the direction of what medical care support is going, and who's the most vulnerable. It's always children. So those are kind of the areas that I work with. The other hat that I have also is just perinatal care. It's really pretty upsetting that we have some of the lower or higher mortality rates in perinatal care in the world. It's ironic that I've been going to a lot of countries around the world when we do have a lot of issues just in the United States with disparity. So those are the areas that I will be continuing to work on. One of the advantages you have as you start, again, I never really thought it'd be good to be a president but it just gives you some power and some access. So I've gotten to, talk to congressmen and senators, and they do hear and they do listen. So that's why, like, keep on working and getting your foot in the door. If you're at the table, things can happen. If you're not at the table, you know, they just kind of ignore the issues. So we really do have to be vocal and keep on pushing, particularly this day and age. So thank you so much for having me. Hopefully this is what you were hoping to get.
This is more than anything that we were hoping to get too. Like, this has been such a spectacular opportunity to, like, speak with you. I know everyone, I can not just speak on my behalf, I know that everyone has, like, been very enlightened by this. At least as a man, I've never really, like, understood the discrepancies and, like, how, like, what kind of, like, I haven't personally understood, like, the issues that women have to go through with healthcare, at least not so deeply. And this definitely, like, illuminated me. And I think,
and as I said, I really don't like to blame men. It's just because part of it is really our fault. It's you know, we just you just kind of don't want to push yourself or think about it. And you know, I've had a lot of men who are supportive to me, but you just have to believe in yourself. And it's hard. I mean, you know, all our work is kind of hard, but I would just say is remember how valuable anything you do is. You know, there are a lot of people who don't add value to our world. And I think that's what is such a wonderful thing about healthcare, whatever areas you are, or healthcare policy. It doesn't have to be as a physician. It's you're doing work, you're getting paid for it, but you're doing good in the world, and that, you know, a lot of people's jobs don't quite have that. So it's that service is so helpful. You know, we didn't really talk about COVID too much now. You know, COVID was scary. I still had to go into the work, you know, almost every day at the beginning. And it was scary. Like, we were sad that we couldn't work from home, but in some ways, although we were in front lines, I was happy, you know, that I could do something. So it's always a plus and a minus, but I think you always at least feel you're needed and that you can help people, which is such a wonderful feeling. It really is. I think service is just wonderful, and to be able to get paid for it is really good. So be practical too. You have to take care of yourself. And then the last thing, I didn't put enough emphasis on it, but you really do have to take care of yourself. If you are not healthy, you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, you can't do a good job. And if you can't do a good job, you're not really going to be helping others. So you have to be kind of number one on your list of things. And you know, so try to have some good stress outlets, you know, get those hobbies, keep them tucked in, you know, walk, take the stairs, like little things like that. But they're really important, because if you're not feeling good, you're not going to be doing your best, and then you can't really help others. But you have to be number one, and that really is important. And I know it's hard with these pandemic days, so, you know, try to get out there and try to go for your walks. And I really I feel for all of you. These are supposed to be such special times, and but I'm very thrilled that you guys joined in. It sounds like you all have some great, exciting goals, and we will get through this.
thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bulas. This is really inspirational. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll share my screen right now. I know many people here have a lot to study for. I know, like, classes have been a lot lately, but we'll give you a brief overview of the things we did last week, and also some of the new programs that we have if you have interest in them. We'll try to make it really quickly so everybody can go and study. Let me try to share my screen. Okay. So I think Adam will start. Yeah.
So, hey everyone, I'm Adam, and I wanted to thank everyone for coming to GBM 2. And just listening to Dr. Bulas' message was very inspirational, and I know that we're all honored to have her here with join us today. And in the future as a senior member of the American Medical Physiology Club. Such a wonderful presentation complete. I think we can now move into like a brief overview of what we've already accomplished as well as new business. And Nathalia will go into greater detail about today's agenda.
Okay, sorry, I had trouble moving into the next slide. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for come to our meeting today. So the brief overview is that, yeah, first we're gonna talk to you a little bit about the last activities that we've done the last 2 weeks. And then next, Victoria and Ishton will be talking about our mentorship program, what it entails and what you can get from it, both mentors and mentees. And then Adam and I will be talking about the Symposium, which is our research-based program where you can get more experience to research and also get some publications. And then we'll go over our office hours again and all the lists of resources that you can get from our office hours. Okay.
Right. So these past 3 weeks, we've been so blessed with opportunities to meet 4 wonderful leaders in healthcare. We've met Dr. Langer, who went over leadership in medicine and the nurse surgery program. Dr. Clary, who gave us an overview of robotic surgery and has partnered with AMPC to run a symposium for Children's National Hospital. Dr. Spencer led us in a discussion on research and medical applications, how to be a successful applicant. And now with Dr. Bulas today in her wonderful discussion with women in medicine and her career path. And then this coming Friday, we'll be meeting with Dr. Semnow, where he'll be coming in with a former patient to discuss his former medical treatment case with that patient and give it from both the medical practitioner side as well as the patient side. Very, very exciting.
Yeah, so if you weren't able to come to any of these events, you can always just email us or DM us in our Instagram and ask us for a recording because we recorded each one of our events. And now I'll lead Victoria and Ishan and let them talk about the mentorship.
Hi, everyone. Victoria and I will be introducing the brand new AMPC mentorship program. It's a project that we hope to be starting over the next few weeks and into the future, regardless if we remain online next semester or not. We really hope to get you guys more involved with AMPC and each other. The links to sign up as mentors and mentees will be posted in the chat, as well as the last weekly AMPC email. Victoria will now go over an overview of the new program.
Hey everybody, we are so excited about our new mentorship program and to share with you what this program is about. We hope through this program that you'll be able to find community amongst your fellow pre-L students here at GW. Our focus is to provide you with an outlet for a more personal connection between the upperclassmen and underclassmen members of AMPC. We really want AMPC to feel like a community where we are not just colleagues, but friends. We believe that this program will be an amazing opportunity to provide and receive exceptional guidance through the difficult yet rewarding journey of becoming a healthcare professional. Our e-board will be pairing up mentors and mentees based on your application responses, but we're open to switching pairings if necessary. Please feel free to reach out to Ishan and I if you have any questions or the rest of the e-board. Ishan will explain our main goals for this amazing new program next.
Thanks, Victoria. So now let's break down the goals that we hope to achieve step by step. The first step is that you guys submit the mentor-mentee form to us and make sure to be as descriptive as possible and as honest as possible. This will allow us to make the best mentor and mentee matchups. From there, we will help you get in touch with one another and give general guidelines for the future. The requirements will be pretty simple, including have at least one check-in, ideally through FaceTime or Zoom on a bi-weekly basis. We will provide weekly suggestions on potential fun activities and important talking points to use during your check-ins, but feel free to talk or do whatever the group decides on. Progress will also be recorded on an Excel sheet to be filled out by the mentor after each check-in. Besides being the very simple requirements, the program is really whatever you want to make of it. We hope that groups bond and build strong connections with one another over time. Check-ins are meant to be fun and help your groups get closer through talking about your lives in and outside of being a pre-health at GW. As Victoria said, your mentor or mentee should not just be your colleagues. They should also be considered as your friends. So be yourself during your check-ins. In my personal experience, my mentors were my closest friends. I could say that I wouldn't be where I am today without them. I luckily met them in my first semester of freshman year, where I was really confused and I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what research was, I didn't know what classes to be taken, but my mentor provided me all of that and more. Now, I have tons of research. I know exactly where I'm going in my classes. I feel confident as a pre-med. Because of them, yeah, I've gotten to where I am today. So I hope this mentorship program allows you guys to form the same type of connection and access new rewarding opportunities. So now let's go back to Victoria, who will speak more specifically about the benefits of becoming a mentee.
So how many of you are a little bit confused or lost about where to begin on your path to a career in healthcare and medicine, or just how to attack college life in general? I can certainly say that I felt this way this time last year. As one of the younger members on the e-board, I know I'm always going to the older e-board members for help and advice. This program is going to offer you just so many valuable opportunities and experiences in order to jumpstart your knowledge about healthcare and learn what being a pre-health student is really about. So here are some of the key benefits of becoming a mentee in our program. Career advice. I personally know I'm still really unsure about what specialty I want to get into as a physician, but having a mentor to talk it out with and explore that with has definitely been something that's beneficial to me. Additionally, for research opportunities, from partnering with your mentor on research projects to them suggesting fascinating labs to join, the opportunities are truly endless. We're also trying to coordinate some group volunteer events, and you can also receive suggestions from your mentor about the best places to volunteer in the DC area. Mentors can tell you who the best professors are and what classes to take from their experiences. In terms of class and homework assistance, your mentors have been through it and can be very knowledgeable about all the challenging courses and subjects we all take as pre-health students. They're there to help you. Additionally, you'll benefit from networking and developing professional and social contacts through your mentor, and quite frankly, all of our mentors who will offer their knowledge and advice. Maybe you'll find yourself in the same class as your mentor or another mentee. Now you have an instant friend and study partner. We really want everyone to become friends with one another and enjoy this program. It can be hard to make friends and meet new people, especially in this virtual setting, and this program will definitely help you tackle that struggle. We really hope that you're excited as we are and encourage all of our members to apply to our program. Now let's take it to Ishan, who will talk about the benefits of becoming a mentor.
Thanks, Victoria. The upside to this program is not limited to just mentees, but mentors as well. As a mentor, you'll be placed into a direct leadership position and have the ability to control and organize the biweekly meetings to whatever you believe will best cater to your group. You will have the opportunity to form great friendships and connections with underclassmen who will look to you for guidance. Say if you're doing research, the underclassmen who you form relationships with may become valued and trusted members of your team. More particularly if you're doing independent research or a project that might need a trusted partner over time, look no further than your trusted mentee. After your undergraduate time at GW is over, your mentee will become your legacy, and they will have the opportunity to continue the hard work that you started. A more tangible benefit for mentors is a direct affiliation and leadership position within AMPC. Your input will be valued in the continued improvement of this program moving forward. There's mentorship and leadership experience within AMPC will look phenomenal on your medical school resume. And the more you commit and give towards helping your mentee, such as tutoring or networking, it's the more you can add to your resume. So it's just really, you put in the time, you put in the work, you'll really reap the benefits. We would also like to feature you and your mentees pictures on the AMPC website to officially welcome you to the AMPC family. So far, we have a good amount of mentors and mentees, but we have plenty of room for both and would love for everyone who can sign up by turning in their respective Google Forms found in the chat or the previous email. Remember that sophomores can also be considered as mentors or mentees, so don't hesitate to apply for each. The forms are due by October 5th at midnight. To all that apply, expect news in the form of an email shortly following the due date. And yeah, that's the program. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Victoria and Ishan. Now we will move into a brief rundown of AMPC Symposium updates. And for those who aren't aware, AMPC Symposium is our flagship research program that we help set up teams and link you to senior members for advice and host research and symposium event at the end of the spring semester and help you get published at the end of the year. So I'll take it, Natalia will take over the timeline.
Yep. Okay, so the first thing that we're doing right now is try to get as many researchers and also professors and doctors to help us out with the symposium. And then from their fields of interest, we'll send you guys a number of different topics that you can choose from, and then we'll from the groups. So our plan is to have the team building this semester, especially by the end of November, I guess. And then in January, hopefully we're in person and then we can start the research together. Then we'll have the symposium or the third phase after we finish the research. So that could be the end of the spring semester, but that probably will depend between the teams. And then we have a publishing phase that maybe it will be in the spring semester at late spring semester or in the summer as well, depending on when you have the findings and when you have your research finished. Okay, so I'll lead Adam next.
Sure. Just a brief overview of what the research team will look like. Essentially, it comes down to the student members are going to be responsible for conducting the research, and teams will be about three to four students. They'll plan and conduct research as well as present their findings at our symposium in the spring. So then the senior members will work alongside and provide advice and insights into conducting scientifically sound research that can then be published. And what the e-board will be doing is helping you to find opportunities in journals to publish your research in. Now I'll bring it back to Natalia for a discussion of our office hours and career services.
Yeah, just to let you all know, I think we've told all of you before, but just to keep in mind, we have our office hours on Fridays and Saturdays. Mine are gonna be from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. EST. So it's right before the whatever academic activity or career services that we have. And it's the same Zoom link, so you can come whenever and just stay until the activity, or you can leave and then come back. And then Adams is starting at 3 p.m. EST on Saturdays. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, and just to go in a little bit more depth about what we can do for you during our office hours is we offer career services. Some of the career services that we have are resume guides, personal statement guides, research and lab sample emails, virtual shadowing opportunities, general advising, which includes personal, academic, professional, symposium related, and also we've created a list, a huge list of different opportunities for virtual volunteering, as well as shadowing, and different resources for you to use to help you become a better applicant during your time. Meetings, we can also go with meetings to discuss what professors are good, what classes to take, etc. But yeah, that's just a little bit about in the depth about our career services that we can do during our office hours. I'll bring it back to Natalia.
Yeah, I do want to add, I remember a member asked about shadowing to Dr. Bulas, and so we have some virtual shadowing opportunities. Because of the pandemic, I don't think we can go in person yet, but we talked to Dr. Spencer last Friday, and he said that it's really good to at least go out and try to find opportunities. So having those virtual shadowing done, even though it's virtual, it's also beneficial for you. So you can always come to us during office hours or email us and then make an appointment maybe, and then we can send you the list that we have. Okay, and then for the last thing, it's just an additional information. We're gonna have Dr. Elizabeth Fontana, who's a neurosurgeon in Lenoxville, I believe, and also other affiliated hospitals, coming on October 4th at 5 p.m. EST. It's our next GBM. And she did ask me to ask you to fill out a form asking her questions that you may have for her. So then she'll prepare her presentation in regards to those questions. So I can right after this, I can send in the chat the link to the form, but I don't have it right now. Yes. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Guess not.
I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Okay, let me send you the link.
Was the link shared to in our last email?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I sent it to the emails and I'll be sending them until Wednesday. I told her that I'm gonna send her the email, the form filled out by Wednesday afternoon. So you can fill out with any questions you have. I think it's anonymous, so no worries. Or you can ask anything you would like. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming. If you have any questions, feel free to just shout out or type it in the chat. You can always DM us or email us as well. Yeah, we're really happy to have you here and that you stayed. I know it took a little bit longer than usual, but I hope you learned a lot and I hope that we can help you in your career and in our academics as well.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you guys. Bye. Have a great week. Good luck with everything.
Thanks,
Exams.
guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. I think I'll end the meeting right now. Bye, guys.
Bye.